What we're sending a message to the U.S. You come and attack Ontario, you attack livelihoods of people of Ontario and Canadians. We're going to use every tool in our toolbox to defend Ontarians and Canadians.
There will be no winners in a trade war. Certainly from Newfoundland and Labrador's perspective, we have no interest in stopping the flow of oil and gas.
I had the chance to meet with Mr. Trump last weekend in Paris, and he told me very clearly that we can avoid those tariffs if we do what needs to be done with the borders.
Are there cracks in Team Canada's armor? That's just a taste of what we're hearing from premiers since their virtual meeting with the Prime Minister 24 hours ago. It was the second call that they've had since Donald Trump announced plans to slap 25% tariffs on all Canadian imports as soon as he gets into the White House. So why is he threatening that? Well, the president-elect says he wants action on border security. Here's an excerpt from what Trump told Time magazine. He said, quote, "We can't forget Canada. We have tremendous illegal immigration coming in through Canada. Drugs are coming in through Canada in large numbers. We are not going to allow that to happen, and I'll take action against Canada and Mexico," end quote. The Prime Minister and Premiers have said strengthening the border is a priority. Last night, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc said a plan will be rolled out soon. But some provinces are already moving forward with their own plans. Today, Alberta announced it's spending $29 million on its own border security. Joining us now is Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. Hi, Premier. Welcome back to Power Play.
Thanks, Mike. Nice to see you.
Now, yesterday, immediately after that meeting with the premiers and the Prime Minister, Doug Ford said that tariffs are coming from the U.S. 100%. Is that your assessment?
I think there's a very, very high likelihood. I think the U.S. president-elect has been pretty clear about some of the things that he wants to see, which is a more robust response at the border to stop the illegal migrants and illegal fentanyl. We're very close, though, to the inauguration on January 20th. And so the question is, can a response be rolled out fast enough in order to be able to stop that? And so I share Doug Ford's pessimism, but we still think that we've got to do whatever we can to demonstrate that we take the border issues seriously. And that's one of the things that we've started today in Alberta with the announcement we made.
Yeah, and I asked because Premier François Legault in Quebec today said that he met with Trump last week in Paris, and Trump basically told him that if you take care of what you need to at the border, then you can't avoid those tariffs.
Yep, exactly. And so I guess I'm glad to see, and this was one of the positives that came out of our discussion yesterday, is it sounds to me like that message has been heard loud and clear. All of the premiers mentioned that in our first meeting with the Prime Minister, and he reported back with the plan that he is going to be rolling out. He wanted to make sure that he'd run it by us first before making the call to the U.S. president, and then, of course, we'll see more detail around it on December the 16th. And so the things that he shared are very consistent with the things that we announced today in Alberta. So I hope that is going to be enough to get the conversation going in a different direction. But I think we're all steeling ourselves for the fact that we may be facing across the board 25% tariffs on January 20th.
Yeah, but unlike Premier Ford, you have said that you would not cut off energy exports. When you consider the seriousness of what President-elect is threatening right now, why would you take that type of leverage off the table for Alberta?
Well, I think you can talk about tariffs, but you certainly cannot talk about turning off the taps. That's very, very dangerous talk, especially when we're talking about our friendship with the United States, what signal that would send, the impact it would have on their national security, their energy security, and our credibility as a partner that they can rely on for their energy needs. I've said that is absolutely not a consideration, completely not on. And I personally have also told the premiers that I don't like tariffs. I don't want tariffs to be on Canadian goods, and I don't want them to be on American goods either. When you put 25% tariffs on everything coming in from the United States, remembering we already have to pay more because our dollar is not worth as much as an American dollar, it is going to be punitive to Canadian consumers, whether it's playing cards or cherries or ketchup or any of the other items that the Prime Minister has talked about. I prefer to take the approach of telling the Americans the impact their tariffs will have on their own citizens. A 25% tariff on Canadian energy will, we understand, increase the price of gasoline by $1 a gallon. And I think that's going to be very persuasive. So those are the kind of arguments that we want to make, that we're doing a lot on the border to be able to address our joint concerns, and that the Americans benefit from this really special relationship that they have with Canada.
Respectfully, wouldn't it be even more persuasive, especially to Donald Trump, if you said, okay, if you want to play hardball, then we can play hardball, and we know how much of the energy that we supply to you, well, that is now going to be in play. Isn't that a better negotiating tactic?
I don't think so. I mean, 4.3 million barrels a day is significant. The Americans have a strategic petroleum reserve that has been drawn down. It's dangerous to the world to have that kind of conversation. The Americans are still the military force that is ensuring that they have a strong presence around the world in all the hotspots. And I just don't think, I think it's dangerous to have that kind of conversation. That's why I've said it's not even a consideration.
So do you think that the fact that it feels like premiers were not united after yesterday's conversation over the phone, it was just 24 hours afterwards, and it sounds like premiers are saying different things. How helpful is that in trying to argue with Donald Trump over tariffs and saying that we are getting our house in order?
Well, I think the way we get our house in order is to focus on the things that the U.S. president has raised as irritants. He's raised the issue of our 2% NATO commitment, that we haven't reached it, and we don't have a plan to reach it till 2032. He's raised the issue of border security, both migrants as well as fentanyl. And in the past, he's raised the issue of China using our country as a backdoor to sell cheap goods into the United States. Now, he's acknowledged that we've actually addressed that last issue. We addressed the issue around aluminum and steel, and we also matched them on the tariffs on China. And so I think that the president will recognize when we're making an effort to address the issues that he's raised. But let's start there. I mean, it's in our interest to make sure that we don't have criminals trafficking in humans or guns or drugs into Canada and vice versa. And so we've got a common interest here. I think that's the best place to get started.
But doesn't this kind of division from what we're seeing from the different premiers, doesn't it only help the president-elect?
I would love to see us all focus on what we agreed to focus on, which
So
is.
are you now? Do you think that all of you are focused on it right now?
I can tell you that the conversation was around border security. The first time we had a conversation, it was around border security. The second time we had a conversation, our announcement today was around border security. So we're trying to be consistent in Alberta, and I hope that the model that we've put forward, putting sheriffs at the border, putting more, putting drones at the border, making sure that we've got sniffing dogs at the border, doing commercial vehicle inspection. We hope that that becomes a bit of a model for the other provinces to redirect some of their law enforcement to be able to support the border services effort, and that we can get on the same page on that, because that's what I think I heard from the U.S. president, that he wants to see some meaningful action on that.
On your border announcement today, what data do you have that supports the decision that you made to put all of those additional resources at the border? Is this about actual increases in crossings at the Alberta-Montana border, or is it really all about trying to address Trump's threats here?
Well, we've had a fentanyl crisis in this province for a number of years. We have had an overdose crisis and overdose deaths that skyrocketed during COVID. Fentanyl's getting here somehow. The gangs that are using guns, those guns are getting here somehow. The human trafficking that is occurring, that's happening somehow. And so we have to do more to make sure that we do not have criminals using our a border that is unguarded as an excuse to be able to continue victimizing Albertans, and then in reverse. I mean, if we've got these problems here, then it's reasonable to assume that Montana is going to have spillover effects as well. So we think we need to do what we can to address it. And the stats, I mean, I can look at what our alert team is. So we've got a special force that does that shuts down drug houses and shuts down some of the fentanyl super labs. And they've dismantled 6 fentanyl labs and press pill operations. They've dismantled 2 fentanyl super labs. They have apprehended some 31 kilograms of fentanyl and precursors in one project that they were on. So we have all of these instances. We're shutting down drug houses pretty well every week. We've got coordinated busts happening from all of, whether it's the pill presses using the precursor drugs or whether whether it's a plan for the streets. I mean, we know we've got a problem in Alberta, and I can understand why the Americans are concerned that our problem is also having an impact on the border. We think it goes both ways, and so that's why we're going to work with the Montana governor to be able to see if we can have some joint operations. But there is no denying that we've got a fentanyl crisis in Alberta.
Yeah, Premier, I won't deny that either, but some of the stats don't really bear out where it's coming from and the measures that you've taken as a result. U.S. Customs Border and Protection data for the 2024 fiscal year show that only 1.4 kilograms of fentanyl was seized at the border with Montana. So are you investing $29 million to stop about 3 pounds of drugs?
Well, maybe that's an indication we're not doing enough inspections. Just because you haven't caught it doesn't mean it's not happening. If you inspect less than 1% of the vehicles, then maybe you're only going to catch 1% of the problem. I guess we'll know once we deploy our 7 teams, once we deploy our drones, once we deploy our commercial vehicle inspection and our dog sniffing teams.
So
I guess we'll find out.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but so does that mean that you don't actually really know yet whether or not that is the problem, and you're investing this $29 million on hoping to find more?
Well, I know that fentanyl doesn't get teleported into Alberta. It's coming here somehow. And so it's either coming across the southern border or it's coming across from BC. And so it's going to be up to us with these teams to find out where that problem is and to be able to solve it, because it's a problem here just as much as it is in American cities as well.
I guess in my last question here, because some might look at this and say, and I know you had said in your press conference that you had already developed this plan before President Trump was president-elect, but some would look at this and say that it's reactive and that we are just basically acquiescing to his demands.
Well, if you want to go back and look at, I do mandate letters, so I'm very transparent about the agenda that I have. I wrote in my July 2023 letter to my public safety minister to set up sheriff teams for fentanyl and for border issues so that we could address this issue. So he's been working on this. It's part of the reason why we're able to roll it out, accelerate our plans. We were planning on releasing this after the budget, but we got budget allocation early so that we could release it early. So we've accelerated a plan that we were already intending to do, because this is a legitimate problem and it's something that is killing Albertans, and we won't stand for it anymore. We have to take these actions to make sure that we're protecting our citizens.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Mike.